I'm here with Carla of Vital Strength and Physiology. Carla and I go way back, I think, to 2019 when we first worked together. And recently, Carla, you congrats on the Shoulder Foundation's launch because I think you launched at the beginning of
Thank you.
August, which is an online
Yeah.
training program for people with shoulder issues. And we're going to be talking today just about like your journey into entrepreneurship, moving into that online space, so creating online programs, and how you collaborate with other professionals. So, uh, Carla, I'm going to let you take it away and just tell us a little bit about your background, how you got into being a business owner.
It was by chance in some ways and by destiny in other ways. I never actually really thought I was going to be a business owner. Um, my mom begs to differ because the one of the first semesters I signed up for Entrepreneurship 101 or 201 or whatever they call it at the University of Calgary. And to me, it was just like, oh, that's a fun filler class. I need to do an extra little course. And hindsight 2020, it was probably me just thinking at the time that like owning your own business would be kind of a cool thing. I just didn't really take it seriously, and I never took any other business courses after that. And so after I finished my undergrad in kinesiology at the University of Calgary, I started working in Calgary and figured out that I really wanted to do a master's, but the master's program that I wanted to get into was on hiatus for a bit. We didn't know how many years it would be on hiatus for. So it was like, okay, enter the workforce, play the waiting game, see if I can apply for it, when it comes out. And so it ended up being a 3-year hiatus before the Masters of Kinesiology program came back at the University of Calgary. And I got into that. And so in the meantime, I started working at the Canadian Sport Institute and some other places. And when I got into my master's, kind of went down to part time, thought that I would work at the Canadian Sport Institute forever at the time.
Yeah.
I was like, just nailed and landed like my dream job, and it's awesome, and I'm going to work here forever. Thought it was, get my master's, just move up in pay scale, keep working with teams. It'll be awesome. When I finished my master's, I kind of went back to them because I had still been working for them throughout my master's as well. And I went back to them and I kind of said, okay, I got the master's you wanted me to get, and like, I'm ready for full time again. And they're like, well, we don't really have a full time position anymore for you. We don't have that space. We've had someone else fill the teams that you were not with, and you can still work with the teams you're with. But I think it ended up being like maximum maybe 3 to 5 hours a week with those teams. And they're like, you can totally stay with those teams and be a contractor with us. But they were like, 3 to 4 p.m. Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, like weird times.
Hmm.
And then the commute and then the parking. So I was like, I think I'll get another job. So I did land another job. At the time, it was called Revolution Human Performance. That's where we met.
Yeah.
And Revolution seemed like another really great place to work. If I couldn't work for the Canadian Sport Institute, I can still work with all these bobsledders and hockey players. And they had just a cool range of athletes there and regular people there that all trained together. And I thought, okay, like this is a good little bridge. And then, 1 year after working there, they decided to kind of close their doors.
Yeah.
And I was like, what felt like left on the street. Like, again, I was like, okay, I had this like great full time job. They left me on the street. Now I got this other great full time job. They left me on the street. And so I was like really kind of forced to like figure out what to do next. And some of the athletes at Rev kept saying, like, like, where are you going? What's going to happen?
Hmm.
And so I just reached out to some of the gyms in that area, asked if we could kind of rent some space temporarily while we figured it out. And we ended up staying there for like 3 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, just over 3 years, because that was in 2017 that they closed. And fast forward to 2020 is when the pandemic hit, and we were still working out of that space. Um, Never really kind of chose entrepreneurship. It like kind of landed in my lap as like the only option.
Mm.
And I really felt like I wasn't like a good life personal trainer. I felt like I wasn't gonna be comfortable and happy like landing at a big box gym, which is, I guess, what felt like the only other option, at the
Yeah.
time. It's like maybe I could go work at another small private gym, but this doesn't seem to be working out for me.
Yeah.
So maybe I just need to start my own thing and have a little bit more control, right, over my pay and a little bit more control over things closing and having to like reboot because that was just so hard.
Yeah.
So that's how I guess the entrepreneurship journey kind of like really took off. Thought it was fun to like get a free Wix account and like design my own website. It's like, oh cool, I made a website. Oh cool, I can like process payments for 3% or something. And
Yeah.
I don't know, it really just flipped when it was like, okay, now I need to find out how to make a 40-hour work week happen. Very
Mm-hmm.
different.
Once you decided that you're like, okay, I'm going to own my own business, I'm going to kind of jump into this full time. Um, where did you start? Like, how did you figure out, how to set up your business?
There was no knowledge there. Like I
Yeah.
said, I took like one entrepreneurship class. In that class, the whole class is set up around design a business plan.
Hmm.
So you and I think five or six others just sit down, choose a random business that you want to make up, and then you do some research in various aspects, and you're just writing a business plan as you go. Our team ended up winning that
Oh, congrats.
that entrepreneurship
Yeah.
project. Yeah, I guess we had the best, most viable business plan. I don't know,
Yeah.
but then when you're actually forced to like make it happen, yeah, there's no knowledge really there. I mean, best case scenario was that that gym space allowed me to like rent some space from them. I think it
Hmm.
was like $25 per client that I would see they offered.
Hmm.
I had no idea if that was a good, price. I only knew what my hourly rate was at the other gym.
Yeah.
And so I was like, okay, I guess we'll start there. If he's going to charge me 25 and I charge my client 25, then that's like 50 on top of that.
Yeah.
So, okay, let's start there. And that's how I started the business. I was like, okay, if some of these athletes want to follow me, I don't know what to charge, but like $25 an hour seems fine, even though that's quite low. I mean, that's like, that was probably the salaried wage that I would get way back when at the Canadian Sports Institute for $25, but salaried. So like
Yeah.
always 40 hours a week. So
Yeah.
$25 here and there is like not very much, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It ended up, that we got busier, that I got busier and busier there through probably a bit of word of mouth,
Yeah.
a bit of social media. There was Instagram still at the time. I started to post a little bit on there.
Yeah.
I think I started to write emails to people that I knew and
Yeah.
just said like, "Hey, I'm doing this work and I can help." As more people maybe felt like the resource was valuable, then the client list started to grow.
Mhm.
And then I think I didn't start increasing my prices until I started getting into like 30, 40-hour work weeks.
Oh, yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, more people want to come in and see me. And I already have like 8 hours of clients today. So maybe I could charge a little bit more. And so
Mm.
I think I went up to like $65 an hour. I was like, ooh, if you buy a 10 pack, I'll give you 65 or 60 an hour.
Yeah.
But it was just very much like hodgepodge, just like trial and error there because I mean it
Mhm.
worked out.
Clearly,
Yeah.
you actually started with pricing. Like, you actually figured out what you were offering and how you were going to price it.
And just kind of based it on, I think, like, okay, well, usually the sessions are an hour 15 in all the places I've worked. So let's just like start with that hourly
Yeah.
number. I didn't have any small groups. Like Rev had
Yeah.
only groups of five, not one-on-ones.
Hmm.
Um, and I think I started with one-on-ones
Yeah.
and grew into some group training. Yeah.
Yeah. Is there a reason why you chose one-on-ones to start and then grew into group?
I think because, the initial, like the first thing I would do with someone is an initial assessment, right? So it's already a one-on-one appointment to start.
Mm.
And then I needed to kind of figure out like where does this person fit? Are they like an after work kind of person? Maybe they're more of a small group person that they don't mind training with other people. They have a little bit of training background. But when someone comes in for a one-on-one, like they're already getting that one-on-one attention.
Mm.
And then I think I just gave them like just, chatted with them and gave them the option of like, I work mostly one-on-one. Most people can't come into a small group training session at 10 a.m. or 1 p.m.
Yeah.
But those with flexible schedules could come in.
So you're actually paying attention to what your clients needed and then created like offers around their availability and then just the type of training that they like to do. Was there any ever big like aha moments for you where you're just like, oh, business is starting to feel like it makes sense? Like, do you feel like you had any benchmarks?
all along the way, it's just felt like I would say like survival mode, but
Mm,
some days it just really felt like survival mode. It was like, okay, now it's tax season. Okay, I have receipts. Okay, I have records of what we did, like how do we kind of put this all together.
mhm,
And then at some point, that gets a little out of hand and you're like, I think I need to hire an accountant. And then it's
yeah,
like, oh, okay, accounting, that's like a specialty in and of itself. Like I don't have to be the accountant person, so we hired a little bit of help there. And then it
yeah,
was like, oh, our website, we're getting some like feedback that our website is like hard to follow. It's like maybe I can take some of this extra money and like put it towards like Jody to
yeah,
help redesign the website to make that like a little bit better. But I think along the way it was very much like a like wait and see what the like limiting factor is.
mm.
And then figure out how to solve that new problem. Like it's just constant problem solving, I feel like.
Oh yeah, you're really like a feedback loop. You're like, what's the feedback, and then take an action based on like
Based
trial.
on
It's
that,
trial
yeah.
and error, right?
Yeah, it
Which
is,
is
yeah.
what business is. It definitely
It
feels like
does
that.
feel like that, yeah.
Yeah.
Because then
Would
once the website's beautiful, it was like, okay, no one's getting stuck on the website. No one's emailing me to figure out where things are. They're actually just like clicking things and booking themselves in. It's like, okay, that process is done and
yeah,
ready. But then it's like it's always something else. It's like, well, now I want to sell more things. Or like, how do
right.
I do that? Now the website needs changing again. Okay, new feedback loop. Like we've gone through that loop so many times. You
Yeah.
and I even.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
have a few times. Um, but it means that you're doing things because the problem always changes, right? Like
Hmm.
when you're taking action and the problem keeps changing, it's usually because you're growing and you're progressing and you have new problems. I feel like that's a good sign in my books. You're not
Hmm.
always coming up against the same problem. Yeah,
That's true.
yeah. So how do you this is more of like an entrepreneurial question. How do you balance like the professional aspect of your work with the running a business side of your work?
Actually, not well.
Okay.
Um, and I guess that would be like, okay, so the professional side is like actually fulfilling like the service,
Yes.
like training somebody, testing somebody, assessing somebody. And I feel like I don't do the balance of the two well because I am always overworking myself. Like
Mm,
after a 40-hour work week, you have to still write like up to 40 programs, probably not 40 programs because some people are coming in more than once to see you. But like the business running side of things is like, okay, how do you now program all of those people, make sure that people are paid, and make sure that they're going to stay in your schedule for a few months so that you
yeah.
don't run into the same problem of no one's coming to see you anymore.
Hmm.
And so I feel like, I mean, even still to this day, I find it really hard because I like working. And so I tend to overwork and I tend to
Yeah.
not shut off at all. Where it's like, as soon as I'm done 40 hours of clients, it's what's the next thing I can do? Even if I've hired help for certain things, like outsource a bit of the website stuff or outsource a little bit of admin work or something,
Hmm.
I always I don't know, like my mind's always just like really revved up to what's the next thing.
Yeah.
So I'm probably not a really good person to ask. Like even if there's not work to do, I'm like, what could I be doing? What could I be posting? And what should I be researching? And what does the new research out there say? And
Wow.
my mind is just constantly going.
Do you have any systems for shutting off, uh, for like kind of shutting down and just switching gears into regular life?
Well, I like train for marathons
Mm, yeah.
and
Okay.
races and things like that. So I would say like I don't really say I have like a system, but I have a coach, and so
Yeah.
he helps me like program like one of Vital's coaches, and I like switch. So he programs for me and I program for him. And
Cool.
so for me, like training and going to the Rockies and going to the mountains is like the whole other side that I really like to do too. And
Mm,
so I do make time for those things, and do make time for friends and do make time for family. But basically, if something is not in the schedule, it is work time. I find it really fun. So I guess it's probably that I find like the business side, like my creative outlet too. Ooh, does the website look pretty? Ooh, do I like the email template? Ooh, do I have like another program I could write? So I think it probably for me, maybe I just don't even, yeah, need like as much turn off as others.
Is there anything that you wish you would have known at the beginning of your business building journey now?
I don't know if there isn't really any advice because I mean, if I say something like, I wish I would have known that it's going to be hard, like I kind of knew it was going to be hard, or if I say something like, I wish that I would have known that it would have all worked out in the end, like it doesn't matter because when you're in the grind, it doesn't like you can't think that far ahead. Like
Mm-hmm.
I don't really know how to set like a 5 or a 10 year goal. I've talked about this to some of my mentors before. I'm like,
Yeah,
how do you set like long term goals? And their perspective is like, don't do it. They're like,
interesting.
you have to sort of like live a little bit more in the short term and you have to think a little bit more in the short term sometimes, as long as you're constantly like evolving. But to like be able to predict how like what's going to happen in 5 years, it's just not realistic. I don't even know if there's really anything I would have been able to say to myself then, like that that would have resonated. I think if it was
Yeah,
coming maybe from a mentor of mine at the time that was different, like a different mentor, and it wasn't coming from like future me, maybe it would have been different. It's all good. Like you don't have to be number one at everything. You don't have to be perfect. That's always been my approach. Is like it doesn't have to be
yeah.
perfect. It just has to be progressing. And yeah, I think it's worked out okay for me.
How did you find your mentors, and why did you choose to have mentors?
One of my mentors was Jeff Osadek, and he was a teacher of mine at University of Calgary.
Mhm.
And so I think because I would just be so annoying and just ask him so many questions after class and about training, and I was always like, I need to read more books. Like, which
Mhm.
book should I read? You know, other books and stuff. So I think he naturally like kind of took me under his wing. So that was like probably the second mentor that was really impactful and that I acquired, I would say, is Carmen Bott in Vancouver.
Mhm.
And that was like a social media find. Like she was really posting a lot on social media at the time.
Mhm.
And I remember saying to Jeff, my partner, like Carmen is kind of like who I want to be in like 5 or 10 years.
Oh yeah,
Like she's teaching at the university. I was teaching at the university. She was training teams. I was training teams. She was doing some individual coaching and one-on-one stuff and track stuff. And that's what I was doing as well.
yeah,
But she was like 10 years older than me. And so she was kind of that, yeah, 10 years more advanced. What Jeff did is he bought me a consult call with Carmen for a birthday present. And
awesome.
so I got to meet her. And after that, when I would ask her to send me the link for a paid consult call, like I had more questions about training, she would just send me the link and she wouldn't charge me. She's like, no, it's okay. We got this. Like, we're just friends now. We're just talking. I do think it's like really important to have sort of people that are like a little senior to you that
Mm,
you can ask those questions. And
yeah,
it doesn't have to be a one-way street. Like, you know, Carmen's not as good with tech and stuff. So we'll do calls and she's asking me about how do I work team builder for selling
yeah,
programs? How do you do it? How do you hook that all up to your website? So
yeah.
it can be, I think it has to be like a bit of a two-way street where you can talk both ways or share information.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it is important to have that. I remember listening to a podcast a long time ago, and then it also kind of formed why I always wanted to pay Carmen for her time. But I think the podcast said just that. It's like, if you have someone that you really want to learn from, like you can't just expect them to have all this time for you if they don't know you and you're not part of their network yet. So
Mhm.
like try to trade valuable information with them. Like, hey, I'm Jody, I'm a web developer. I can do an audit on your website. In exchange, can you be on my podcast? So you're
Yeah,
exchanging like something valuable if they don't want to do it for free, and or just booking a consult call. So at least there's a money exchange for like getting knowledge initially.
yeah,
That's the way to do it, I think. I don't think you just should expect that free exchange all the time. But and one of them in particular, like she very much gives more than she takes. She
mm,
would like to beg to differ, but a couple of them, yep. And on our even our mind body booking site, we've
yeah,
got an option for mentorship slash consulting on there. And so yeah, sometimes we do just get whether it's clients kind of just wanting to like know a little bit more about something, not even
yeah.
about their body necessarily, just about training or how to
Mhm.
set up a program or something. People can book that.
How do you create those like professional relationships and the collaborative relationships that you have, like say with someone like Coalition, with the physiotherapists that are helping you build programs? Is how did those relationships come to be, and how do you keep them strong?
I think it all started with like, I actually do think it all started in university, like, in my entrepreneurship class, like, Justin Tan was in my group,
Okay.
and he ended up being the chiropractor that I later worked with at Revolution, and
Hmm.
so that was the first bridge, was like, "Okay, I knew you from school, and now we're working together."
Hmm.
But I think it's a good thing to realize when, like, you don't know what you don't know, and so I'm not a chiropractor, I didn't go to chiropractic school, there's a lot that I can learn from this person, right? I don't need to learn how to do an adjustment. That's not appropriate and that's not ethical, but I can learn what their thought process is about treating someone that way or what rehab exercises he would do. And so I always felt like there was a lot to learn just from like a how do I do my job better based on these other fields and practitioners. And then there's also that they started sending me people. They started sending me some of their clients that didn't need therapy anymore, needed training. And so it kind of started off as like, oh, they trust me enough to like train this person. That's really nice. And then it was, give and take. So I'd send people their way and they'd send people my way. And yeah, Justin was one of the members of Coalition. So then when we all moved over to a bigger space after the pandemic, it was like a natural transition because the space was bigger, they had more therapists there, and we were already used to sending each other clients. So when I was able to hire Nick, then we had, two people that were really good and competent that they could trust. And then vice versa, we had a lot of new therapists that we could like personally try their treatments and then refer people their way. And so, yeah, from that recent podcast we did with Orca
Hmm.
and Coalition that you need to get your hands on,
Yeah.
we talked a lot about that in that chat. It was probably over an hour.
Oh, yeah.
And like one of the main themes was just that, you know, people think that collaborating and like sending clients to another facility is a good way to lose a client. But
Mhm.
in reality, like if you're finding the best outcome for that client and they get better, then you gain trust in the end. And my experience has been that that we like gain more clients and we um, get better outcomes for people if we don't have the time to see them. That would be one way that we need to refer them out to somewhere
Mm.
else so they get help right away. Or B, we don't think we have quite the right skill set for that, then we always like refer out. um, and so yeah, get a hold of that podcast because it's a lot of good chatting in there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I definitely am gonna get a hold of that one. Um, how? I guess my other question is like, how did you find your team members? Like, how did you grow your team? What were you looking for in team members, or how did that come about?
Well, I have a small team right now, and it's kind of like all through, I guess, like a small network and like networking in general.
Yeah.
So like Nick was my first hire. Nick and I worked together at the Canadian Sport Institute a long
Mhm.
time ago. And funny enough, like Nick and I, he had reached out just before the pandemic. So it would be like 2019
Yeah.
in the summer, and he's like, "Hey, I really like what you've been posting on Instagram. I think we have like a similar approach to training. Let's write a book." And I was like, "Write
Mm.
a book? Like, I'm not smart enough to write a book." And so, like, we started meeting up for coffees and like jotting down notes and like kind of writing all these ideas down. And then one day he was like, "I think I'm losing my job pretty soon here."
Oh.
He's like, "There's a big budget cut happening and I can't afford to like take that budget cut like personally.
Hmm.
So I think I'm going to have to find another job." And like I was like, "I'm like super busy. Do you want to come work for me? I don't know how this is going to work, but
Yeah.
let's like do you want to work for me?" And he was like, "Yeah, maybe." And then a week or two later he's like, "Yeah, I lost my job. So if you want to send me any clients, like teach me how or like tell me when,
Yeah.
I'll be there." And so that process was kind of like out of like luck and networking, I guess,
Yeah.
and all of that.
But also
The
for sharing your
future,
knowledge. Like you were already
yeah,
actively sharing, like and teaching people through Instagram, or through your
yeah,
social media channels. Yeah.
yeah, just kind of like putting ourselves out there a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I was starting to do that. And then I guess that's how people know what you're up to, right?
Yep.
Is okay, you're posting about it and you're talking about it. And yeah, so that's how Nick came to be. And
Hmm.
then And then we've always had a partnership with the University of Calgary's MKIN program, 'cause that's the master's that I graduated with. And so
Mhm.
I've always kept in contact with them, and have asked them to keep me on their like list for if master students
Oh, yeah.
need need internships. So we've had like a lot of master students come through our internship for that reason,
Yeah.
especially when we were working more with the teams at the University of Calgary. It just was
Mhm.
like a nice transition. They're upstairs doing like coursework, and then they come downstairs, they do their internship with the teams with us.
Yeah.
And so I got one of my endurance coaches through that internship, which was Chantel.
Mm.
The Again, I don't have that many hires, so it's a short list, but then I hired another endurance coach, Rick, and again, kind of just like put out the feelers, I think, on Instagram, like, hey, we're gonna need to hire another endurance coach soon. And one of my athletes was living in Halifax, and sent one of the local like endurance coaches there our contact, and he ended up having like a super strong interview and a super strong
Wow.
endurance coaching resume, and he's just been like one of the best hires ever. And so that was that one. And then the last one
Mhm.
was Tara. And again, maybe my whole life just revolves around this Canadian Sport Institute. But the last hire I recently made was Tara, who was kind of like my boss at the Canadian Sport Institute.
Okay.
And um, putting, I guess, yourself out there is the lesson of the day here, because Tara and I agreed through the University of Calgary, again, who we always stay connected with, to do like a free talk about careers, I think,
Okay.
in like postmasters careers.
Oh, yeah.
And so we were both invited separately. I hadn't seen her in like 10 years, maybe more.
Yeah.
And we were both chatting there. And when we kind of, after the talk, we connected a bit, and she's like, I'm actually looking for work. I'm like, well, I am looking for more people to work for me too. So
Amazing.
then I hired Tara. So I think, yeah, I think there's something to be said for just, keeping good relationships, keeping people in your thoughts, whether that's through email connections or
Mhm.
just staying on people's lists in one way or another.
Yeah.
And or just like saying yes to things. Like I didn't have to do that talk. To be honest, I was pretty busy and didn't want to do the talk very much,
Mhm.
but I always feel like there's always like good that comes out of just sort of giving back, a little bit.
Yeah. Smart. That's great advice. Okay, my last question. We're not even gonna make it to the shoulder foundations. There's so many other good things we've
We'll
talked
just
about.
plug it quickly. Yeah.
So yeah, my last question was like, what made you want to offer online programs? I'd love to know what made you kind of do the switch from online or like in person to online.
Well, I guess the first switch we made to online was a $20 strength club.
Right.
And that was way back before the pandemic, when I had clients that no longer needed to see me in person, even the ones at Rev. And they're like, hey, I want like a strength program, a general strength program. I'm no longer a bobsledder. I'm no longer playing this sport. I just want something to follow. And I was like charging, I don't know, maybe $150 a month at the time. And they're like, that's a little expensive. And so I was like, well, it doesn't even, if you don't want anything customized, like I can start like a kind of a generalized strength program. And then if
Mhm.
you're okay with it, we'll use this app, and then other people can hop on the same program. And they loved that idea. It's just like nothing, nothing individualized, just
Yeah.
completely generalized. I don't even want email contact, I just want to like have someone write my program that like
Yeah.
will help me get stronger and stay strong. Yeah.
That was me.
So then that was the first like transition to online. And that's worked out really well for us. And then I
Yeah.
think it was 2020, Nick had a foot injury that he was like trying to rehab on his own, and he had done a bunch of foot reading and rehab stuff on his own, and that had led him down a few cool paths and different courses that he took. And so in 2020, I think when we were sitting around, he's like, I think we should make a foot program. Like there's not really any good like videos of like foot training. There's only like towel scrunches. There's like,
Mhm.
ice it, like for all these foot issues. And he's like, I have like so many more better exercises than that have worked for my foot and that have like gotten me out of pain so I can go back to running and training and stuff. And so yeah, that's when we really started to put together Foot Foundations. And that became our second online program.
Well, I believe that is all we have time for. Thank you so much for your time today.